Hello and welcome to I Am with Eric Faria. I am your host, and today it is my pleasure to have here with me in the studio Carla Pileggi Caviola, who is a psychotherapist and a perinatal mental health specialist. I got that. How are you, Carla?
I'm great.
Thank
so
you
nice
for being
to be here. Thank you.
My pleasure to have you. So, Carla, we're going to be talking a little bit about mental health today.
Yes.
Right? So where do you want to begin? I will let you lead this one because you're the expert.
Mental health. This is a topic I think we need to talk about, right? I know more people are starting to talk about mental health now. It's in the media. We've had some unfortunate, more public, suicides, although suicide isn't obviously one of the higher causes of death in America. Mm-hmm. And, my message really is that there is help. Mm. Nobody needs to suffer in silence. And regardless of what one might be going through, it's important that they get the help they need and deserve. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Very good. That's a very powerful and necessary message. And I would like to know, since you work with mothers, mm-hmm. right, mostly?
A large part of my practice is, yes, working with mothers, anything related to conception, pregnancy, and then the postpartum period. Mm-hmm.
So what is something that you see that is specific to that segment of the population?
Oh goodness, there's a whole spectrum of emotional complications, and this is what a lot of people don't realize. Mm-hmm. People often think about postpartum depression as being what people might experience, and that is true. That is one of the complications, and I have to say that's the number one complication of pregnancy. Mm-hmm. Postpartum depression it's not gestational diabetes or preeclampsia, physical conditions. It's actually postpartum depression. But that being said, many women experience during their pregnancy and their postpartum period, which is typically from birth through the first year, mm-hmm. unless mom continues breastfeeding beyond that year, then
Sure.
the postpartum period can be extended. So that being said, many women experience a whole spectrum of complications that might be anything related to stress, anxiety. Some women experience panic attacks if they've never had them before.
Oh, wow.
Typically after delivery, they might experience panic attacks. Some women experience post-traumatic stress.
Really?
Yes, and
wow.
sometimes that's related to their birth experience. Mm-hmm. Okay. Some women, of course, like we talked about before, 1 in 7 women experience postpartum depression. That is a very high
number.
Statistic.
Yeah.
And that also tells us that, again, not every woman is getting the help they need and deserve. Mm-hmm. The other things that women can experience during this time is OCD-type symptoms. So that looks something like intrusive, mm-hmm. unwanted thoughts that are irrational, that keep swirling around the head and causing women to feel very anxious, right? It can also, in accompaniment with that, can also include compulsive behaviors. So excessive hand washing, excessive checking the baby, and in some situations it can become more moderate to severe where it's really affecting mom's functioning and so forth, right? Mm-hmm. In very extreme situations, 1 to 2% of women experience what we call postpartum psychosis. And that is a medical emergency, okay? Mm-hmm. These are the stories that we've heard on the TV that are really heartbreaking when mothers actually kill their infants.
Wow.
And, it's absolutely, of course, heart-wrenching and really, really hard to hear these stories. But, again, it's very rare. Mm-hmm. And that's only 1 to 2% of women. Mm-hmm. But the good news, Eric, is, with all this spectrum of emotional complications, not only are they treatable, but they're actually preventable.
Okay.
So, and when I say prevention, I mean the earlier you see someone, the more chances you have of feeling better and more like yourself sooner, right?
So, are there any? As you were talking, because a lot of things are running through my mind.
Sure.
But are there any signs that you see, that you can notice, where a recent mother is becoming more, are having like one of these symptoms that you just mentioned, perhaps the OCD or PTSD, or anything related to that? Can other people notice these symptoms?
Yeah, sure. So first and foremost, let's talk about, I want to backtrack a little bit.
Okay.
Back to the, what I didn't talk about is the baby blues. And that's a normal, very normal experience that women will have during their first 2 weeks postpartum, okay? So when women are pregnant, they're on the mountaintop of hormones and everybody's glowing, right? And then once they deliver, their hormones will pretty much crash out and almost zero out for 6 weeks. And little by little, their hormones will increase and get back to where they were prior to conception. It'll take about a year. That being said, that affects the serotonin levels in the brain, which is a neurotransmitter that we know is associated to sleep, depression, and anxiety. Throw in the fact that you have a newborn that doesn't know day and night, so they're waking up at all hours to be fed. And throw in any other kind of stressors that can be the case, whether it's, obviously, never mind sleep deprivation because that's obvious, but which is a very real thing, right? We cannot underestimate sleep deprivation.
Sure.
But any stressors, whether they be relational or whether mother has any medical conditions or she's trying to recover from her delivery, the baby might have medical conditions, poor social supports. Maybe they just moved to an area, there's no family, there's no friends. It's very isolating when one has a baby, so it's really important to get connected with positive supports, and that's really important. But there can be a multitude of, of course, stressors, environmental stressors. And so put all these things together, you can see how this would be a very vulnerable time for women and families.
For sure.
And by the way, all that I'm talking about, regarding stress, depression, and anxiety, dads can experience too, okay? But that being said, and that's very important, so dads, make sure you get the help if you need help. So my message to women is, if you are not feeling like yourself beyond 2 weeks after you deliver a baby, because in the first 2 weeks you'll have the baby blues, and that's very common. It's basically related to this hormonal crash. And one of the most common symptoms is just crying, feeling tearful, and sometimes not even knowing why, and feeling overwhelmed. But if you're still crying or feeling sad or down, anxious, anything beyond that 2 week point, that's when you need to talk to your OBGYN or your healthcare provider, because it's no longer the baby blues. Okay, so that is something we need to make that distinguishment here today, okay? If it's not the baby blues, talk to your healthcare provider, and at that point, what we would say in the perinatal mental health world, okay, is the first line of treatment is psychotherapy, okay? And so in whether it's anxiety, depression, OCD, or PTSD, or any kind of symptoms, obviously psychotherapy would be the first line of treatment from mild to moderate cases. And then, of course, moderate to severe cases, if needed be, psychiatric treatment as well, so medication. That being said, that doesn't mean women will need to be on medication for their lifetime. I know that's typically
just
a
for
common,
that specific moment.
A common fear a lot of people have. Oh, I don't want to sign my life away. I don't want to be on medication. That being said, of course, in moderate to severe cases, it can be helpful. It can give them a boost. And the combination of the psychotherapy and psychiatric treatment can be very helpful. But that being said, in mild to moderate, just the psychotherapy can be helpful. So really providing supportive psychotherapy, interpersonal psychotherapy, helping the whole family, helping mom and baby with their attachment, also working with dad. It's a major adjustment having a baby. It's a huge adjustment in one's life, and everything changes when you have a baby.
Wow. So I feel like I just got an education. But in a good way.
Yeah. And again, just again, the postpartum psychosis, again, it's very rare, but that is a medical emergency. So if you ever, any moms that might be having any visual or auditive hallucinations where they're seeing things or hearing things or any kind of delusions where they believe the baby is, an alien or something that's very bizarre, shampooing the walls, bizarre behavior. If you notice any women or if anybody hearing this message here today, that is a medical emergency. So that would be warrant to definitely call 911 or go to the emergency room right away because mom needs to be evaluated right away and get the proper help, okay? So those are, again, I know there's a whole spectrum.
Yes. No, it's fine. This is actually a good point. So we're going to take a little break, but we'll be back, and I want to explore even more because I know now I have even more questions to ask you.
Okay.
But, yeah, so for everybody watching, we're going to be back very soon with Carla, so stick with us. Oi, pessoal, tudo bem? Aqui é o Eric Faria. Espero que você esteja curtindo aí a entrevista. E hoje eu estou aqui para falar um pouquinho sobre comunicação com vocês. Parte do trabalho que eu faço como apresentador e produtor do I Am, tanto no podcast quanto no YouTube, é realmente a parte de me comunicar com as pessoas. Eu ouço histórias, eu gosto sempre de deixar uma gotinha, alguma coisa bem interessante para você aí que está assistindo poder colocar na prática na sua vida. E eu sou coach também, eu sou coach especializado em comunicação e sinergia já há quase 6 anos. Então, a gente muitas vezes não para pensar na nossa comunicação, tanto no trabalho quanto em casa, né, no ambiente, às vezes com os amigos. Como anda a sua comunicação? Parece que às vezes é muito difícil a gente chegar até o coração e a mente de uma outra pessoa, mas na verdade não é. Então estou aqui para falar com você hoje. Se você quiser ter uma nova perspectiva sobre comunicação para 2019, abrir novas portas, tanto pessoal quanto profissional, eu gostaria de trabalhar com você. Então vá até o meu website, www.ericfaria.com. Lá tem as minhas redes sociais também, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube e o Twitter. E você pode entrar em contato comigo através de lá também. Então é isso, estou abrindo novas turmas, quero que você tenha uma melhor comunicação em 2019 e eu te espero lá, tá bom? Então até mais. And welcome back to I Am. I have here with me once again Carla Pileggi Caviola, so I'm just going to jump in. And Carla, so we were talking, you talked about a lot of things, you mentioned a lot of things in the first segment, and I just wanted to ask you a little bit more about the depression aspect of, the post-pregnancy, and then also mention the work that you do with the women while they're pregnant, if you could. Yeah.
So some women, it's interesting, with a sudden surge of hormones once they're pregnant and then the sudden drop once after they deliver, they might experience what we've noticed through research is anxiety or depression symptoms. So if women, once they are pregnant, are already noticing that they have symptoms of depression, feeling irritable, maybe they're feeling some level of anxiety, stress, or, OCD type of intrusive thoughts, scary thoughts of what's going to happen, obviously during pregnancy or maybe after the baby's delivered. These are all things, if any woman is not feeling quite themselves once they're already pregnant, that is definitely a time to start getting the right help. So I start working with, as a perinatal mental health specialist, I work with women already during the pregnancy, and then I help them provide that supportive treatment as well as coping skills. So to help decrease their anxiety, depression, or any kind of symptoms that they might be experiencing. And as we move towards, the delivery, we already have a postpartum plan set. So mom doesn't have to scramble after they deliver. Sometimes women that do experience depression or anxiety after, or any type of emotional complications, they're just not feeling themselves. They might not even have the energy to make calls or figure out who am I going to see or what's happening. This is all brand new. Nobody ever dreams of having a baby and then feeling, sometimes, depressed or anxious, right? Our culture has told us so many messages of what it's like to be a mother, and it's a stroll in the park and everything is beautiful and lovely and it's a blessing. And that might be true, but at the same time, it's quite normal for people to experience sometimes more than one emotion.
Yeah, well, it's a major life change for one, right? That's where everything just begins if you're a first-time parent. And coupled with that, all the other things, right? Like you were saying, your whole routine changes, right? Your sleep pattern might change because you have a newborn at home. Just everything kind of like gets turned upside down, at least for the first few months to a year. I would expect that it's very normal and to be expected.
There's a lot of changes. There's a loss of time that you once had, a loss of independence. Absolutely, everything changes. So absolutely, prevention is available. If a mom knows that she has a history of anxiety, depression, or any mental health history, then absolutely it's important they talk to their OBGYN or midwife or healthcare provider so that they can get the proper support during their pregnancy, already, planned should they not be feeling, great after they deliver the baby, then we already have a plan established. We already have supports in place. So often I'll work with mom during their pregnancy and then after their postpartum period. So prior to the transition and then after the transition. And again, like I said, we're not just working with mom, but it's the growing fetus, right, baby, and then afterwards the newborn and infant. And then of course, if needed be, we'll bring in dad as well. And so there's a lot of attachment that we're talking about, and family, just helping them to feel the best they can feel so that they can be the best in this transitional role as well.
Sure. Are there any specific cases that you remember that you worked with somebody who was really, really depressed or had a lot of OCD or other symptoms that, one of these things can happen to newly minted mothers, that you saw a tremendous change in how they behaved after working with you?
Yeah, I mean, I think for one thing, postpartum depression, it's not just depression, it's not just feeling down, depressed, irritable, having low energy or having difficulty concentrating, and obviously with the hormones too, you can have what we call postpartum brain. It's hard to sometimes recall words, but for sure, it does also affect mom's identity. So moms tend to have this, I'm a bad mom, to the point where sometimes they believe the baby doesn't deserve them. In extreme cases of depression, it's, thoughts of death, thoughts of suicide, and, maybe the baby's better off without me. And so, that's when we know, obviously, when we see in treatment and providing the psychotherapy treatment, and if needed be, like I said, in extreme cases, the medication as well, psychotropic medications, moms will start to realize in time, that the baby is, responding well to mom, and they do have a positive attachment, and moms realize the importance of taking care of themselves as well. Often we talk about, how's the baby, when somebody delivers, right? And everybody's going goo goo gaga over the baby, but we forget to ask how the mom's doing, or never even mind the dad. Nobody ever asks about how the dad's doing,
Especially in our society, no.
So it's so important to get the help, and absolutely when they come and they get the proper treatment, and again, too many women are falling through the cracks here. This is the message why everybody should get the help that they need. This is undertreated and women are just not getting the treatment that they need. But when they do, then they start realizing that they are able to enjoy, they are able to feel like themselves again, They start coming out of it, and they keep telling me they start having better days than worse days, right? So it's not just like a magic, wave a wand and you're gonna feel 100%, right then and there. But yes, with time, they will start feeling more like themselves. They're gonna get coping skills. I do a lot of cognitive interventions. So when women have depression, there's a lot of negative thinking. And so they start being able to use skills to try to help them feel better, behavioral interventions. The same thing with OCD, the scary thoughts. Often with moms, it can be scary things happening to the baby. What if something happens to the baby, or this happens to the baby, and they can be having these scary thoughts, or they can even see that happening in their minds. They almost see like a vision or a movie playing of the baby falling on the floor, or something happening that's really terrifying and anxiety provoking. So when we work with moms and provide them the right coping skills, then they're able to combat those and realize that they don't need to live in fear, that those are irrational fears, and that they can change their thoughts and feel better.
That's good, yes. All right, so this is a perfect stopping point. And we have another segment, so we're going to go more in depth about this, because once again, it's fascinating, and I'm still continuing to get an education right here. Yes. So for everybody watching, we're going to be back right after this short break. Oi pessoal, tudo bem? Aqui é o Eric Faria, espero que você esteja curtindo aí a entrevista. E hoje eu estou aqui para falar um pouquinho sobre comunicação com vocês. Parte do trabalho que eu faço como apresentador e produtor do I Am, tanto no podcast quanto no YouTube, é realmente a parte de me comunicar com as pessoas. Eu ouço histórias, eu gosto sempre de deixar uma gotinha, alguma coisa bem interessante para você aí que está assistindo poder colocar na prática na sua vida. E eu sou coach também, eu sou coach especializado em comunicação e sinergia já há quase 6 anos. Então, a gente muitas vezes não para pensar na nossa comunicação, tanto no trabalho quanto em casa, né, no ambiente, às vezes com os amigos. Como anda a sua comunicação? Parece que às vezes é muito difícil a gente chegar até o coração e a mente de uma outra pessoa, mas na verdade não é. Então, estou aqui para falar com você hoje. Se você quiser ter uma nova perspectiva sobre comunicação para 2019, abrir novas portas, tanto pessoal quanto profissional, eu gostaria de trabalhar com você. Então vá até o meu website, www.ericfaria.com. Lá tem as minhas redes sociais também, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube e o Twitter. E você pode entrar em contato comigo através de lá também. Então é isso, estou abrindo novas turmas, quero que você tenha uma melhor comunicação em 2019 e eu te espero lá, tá bom? Então até mais. Welcome back to I Am with Eric Faria. Once again, I have Carla here with me. So, we were just talking and I asked you, you are a mother, correct?
I am.
So you have 3 daughters?
I have 3 daughters, yes.
What are their ages, if you don't mind?
Sure. I have a 6.5-year-old, 4.5-year-old, and 19-month-old.
Oh, wow. Okay, so
Yeah.
baby. And how was your experience with them? Or actually, what has your experience with them informed about the other mothers that you see and that you help? I think that's a more interesting question.
Okay. Well, if I could maybe just tell you, this is really part of the reason that I got into this work. But my first pregnancy actually was a miscarriage.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so that was obviously very sad and devastating for my husband and I. And so a lot of women experience perinatal loss, whether it might be a miscarriage or, stillborn. We know there's terminations and abortions and things like that. And that being said, people can experience different sadness in their losses. So after I had my first daughter, Sienna, I had some intrusive thoughts of the baby kind of like flying across the room like a football. And it was kind of like, oh, what the heck is that, And I knew that I had no thoughts of harming my baby. And it was just an irrational thought. It was a scary thought. And I just kind of, brushed it off, prayed about, and just kind of left it and never owned it. But I was involved in a mom's group. I met other moms through that. Some of us became friends, and I started hearing people's stories. And that's really when I felt called to go into this work. It was really just hit me.
At a personal level.
This was what I needed to be doing, and helping other moms in their different, spectrum of whatever they're dealing with. But being a mom, back to your question, is every pregnancy is different. And even just the physical symptoms for me, for different women going through pregnancy, whether it's nausea, morning sickness, that can affect your mood as well. Nobody likes to be nauseous,
Nobody
But that
does,
being said, obviously every woman experiences different things. And
did something change from the first to the third pregnancy for you? Just asking because as a man, I can't get pregnant.
So for me, for my experience, like I said, my experience, I had the intrusive thoughts. I had some again with my second, but I just never really let it bother me. It was very mild.
Right.
And as a clinician, I'm clinically trained. I knew that it wasn't like psychosis. I had no intention to harm my babies, right? In fact, I wanted them to be safe.
And the help,
and that's the distinguishment between the OCD and the psychosis. With the psychosis, they actually believe in that delusion or the hallucination. With the intrusive thoughts, with the OCD symptoms, people are, really scared and anxious about it. It's disturbing to them, but typically it has to do with harm coming to the baby. So no, it was like I said, my experience and other people's experiences that I saw my peers and hearing their stories was really what, shaped. Like I said, it was I felt called into this work.
To go and do it, yeah. And you also talked to doctors, right? You mentioned that.
Yeah.
So how is that work with the doctors that you talk to?
So I do, I speak with some doctors locally if they would like. I'm happy to chat with them about perinatal mood and anxiety disorders, give them a short, training. I also go to moms groups, and I am, a trainer in perinatal mood and anxiety disorders. Also, I'm affiliated with Postpartum Support International. I'm one of the founding board members in Connecticut.
Oh, wow.
So we have, we're building up supports for more moms and families, right? We just need more supports. And there's definitely Postpartum Support International, in different states, and New York has their own as well. Support system for moms. I've recently joined the Marseille Society, which is
what is that?
That is another. It's a perinatal mental health network that is international as well as in North America.
Okay.
So it's a great resource as well. But for moms, I would say definitely if you have any questions, if you're suffering, Postpartum Support International is a great resource. Their website is postpartum.net. If any moms are in immediate danger, then I would say call, obviously 911 in New York State or 211 in Connecticut, or go to the nearest emergency room. But obviously, there's help available for women and families, and nobody should suffer in silence.
Well, that's a very important message. Nobody should suffer in silence. I feel like, especially with depression, it's still a taboo topic. And I feel like we put a lot of pressure into new mothers to just get it together as soon as possible, if you will. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Yeah. And we live in an area, too. It's kind of like the Stepford,
Indeed.
The area where women are supposed to be having it all together. And even though they might look like they have everything together on the outside, let me tell you, that doesn't mean on the inside you're feeling 100%. So it's always so important to ask moms and dads, too, how they're feeling.
Right.
Yeah.
So before we go, we have just a few minutes. Is there anything that you would like to say to mothers as a resource? You mentioned the website for postpartum.net, correct? Is there anything else that you would like to mention? Maybe a book, something that they can go and see, maybe a video or what have you, that can actually help them if they are going through this and if they need some help. Maybe, it's not something, and it's not an emergency, but maybe if they want to just get acquainted with more literature on the subject or what have you. Yeah,
so one of my mentors that I took training with is Karen Kleiman, Kleiman. She has been doing this work for 30 years in the Philadelphia area. So she has many books. She's an author and a speaker as well. She has excellent books. But absolutely, if reading is, that's always something to do. But that being said, if they're really not feeling great, the most important thing is psychotherapy, number one. If needed be, in moderate to severe cases, psychotropic medications, and positive support systems. So that might be a mom's group. It might be, your family, your friends, your neighbors, maybe a church or a synagogue or something that maybe you find that positive support.
The community.
Yeah, those are the three pillars of what's going to help mom, and the family in this challenging time. Joyful, but yet challenging time.
Yes. Very good. So, Carla, it was a pleasure to have you here. I know we have a lot more to talk about, so we're going to do a second episode about a different topic. And thank you for being here. So, for everybody watching, all the information will be on at the end of the show in the credits, so you can contact Carla if you are a new mother, if you have any questions, it'll be all there. And for everybody else, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next week with a new episode of I Am.